strikeouts in a game. 20.
Swung on and driven to deep left. It is hard. Down for. It's gone. Yankees win. Yankees win. Bernie Williams homers deep in the left field seat to lead off the 11th inning at a 1-run finish. And the Yankees beat the Orioles 5-4 to win Game 1 of the American League Championship Series. Burn, baby, burn. He's done it again.
Deep left. There it goes. Staring into history. He's done it. He has done it. 62. Aaron Judge is the American League single-season home run leader. The AL King. Case closed.
What is going on, baseball fans? Jeremy Laracuente here, back at it again for the State of the Franchise series. From championship glory to rebuilding years, every team has a story. And the story that we're going to be discussing today is that of the Chicago Cubs. And I'm honored to bring on our guest, a Brit Does Baseball. What's going on, my man?
Hey, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely, man. So, obviously, the Cubs are a historic franchise in Major League Baseball, so definitely going to be a fun conversation with you to discuss them here today. So the way I like to begin this series is basically just kind of get gut reactions and a retrospective on the prior campaign, so in 2024. So let me know, what are your gut feelings and reactions towards the 2024 season?
I mean, as the record shows, probably exactly like 2023. Probably a little bit more disappointment with the firing of David Ross in 2023. I personally, and I know many Cubs fans, expected quite a lot out of Craig Counsell's first year. But in the end, we ended up with the exact same record. I think we finished third in the division this year compared to second. And the records were exactly identical. So there wasn't really much progression, I think, between 2023 and 2024. And I think that's the most frustrating thing, being quite a large market team and, just not progressing when you're meant to be nearing the end of a rebuild.
No, for sure. Obviously that can be, detrimental to the fan base, as, hoping for more and not really getting that. So as we kind of look towards the future, looking towards 2025, the Cubs have had a very busy offseason. So some of the acquisitions, obviously the biggest one, Kyle Tucker, but Ryan Presley, Eli Morgan, Ryan Brazier, quite a few guys were brought in on minor league signings and invites to Major League Spring Training. So let me know kind of which player you feel was the biggest acquisition and what could be a potential sleeper acquisition for the Cubs.
I think the major one is Kyle Tucker, King Tuck. Had half a season ruined by injury last year, came back and still smashed it for the Astros. I think that the fact that we got Kyle Tucker indicates that this is a win now period for the Cubs. World Series, at the very minimum, a division title. I personally don't think we'll extend Kyle Tucker or be able to extend Kyle Tucker based on the previous couple of years and how the ownership has decided to give out contracts. But the fact that we can move him into the 2 or 3 slot in our batting lineup, I look at that lineup now and I'm thinking there's more strength there, there's more depth. It pushes players that were probably batting 5th or 6th last year further down the order, lengthens that out. And I'm excited. I think he's a Gold Glove caliber defense in the outfield. And if by miraculous some reason ownership decide to extend him, I think it's a good club to play for. So that I think is the biggest signing. The sleeper hit, I'm going to go with Eli Morgan from the Guardians. A lot was made of the Guardians bullpen last year with, Class A headline in that group of 4. You had Cade Smith as part of that group, Hunter Gaddis. Eli Morgan actually put together quite a nice season, and it really went under the radar. And I think getting someone like him on, we practically got him for nothing. He could really bolster that bullpen. A real area of weakness that we had last year was the bullpen, especially in the first half of the season. With the relievers that we've got coming back and the ones that aren't, even better. I think with the additions of Eli Morgan, Ryan Presley and Ryan Brazier, that's going to be a real area of strength, I'm hoping, for the Cubs. And I think Eli Morgan could be the sleeper hit of those.
For sure. Definitely, especially in conversation as far as the bullpen, the way that it worked out for the Guardians, Morgan was a very big piece to that. So being able to interject that into a Cubs bullpen for this year is definitely a good move. Now, as we kind of look at the Cubs and some of the injuries that they're faced with, a couple of notable names, on the list as far as on MLB.com, Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, Javier Assad, who was a big piece for the Cubs last season. What do you think is kind of the biggest injury and potential for impact in terms of, being away from the club?
I think currently Dansby Swanson's due to come back for opening day. Should be fit for the series in Japan. Javier Assad, as far as what I've read up and what I've seen, the injury will keep him out for a couple of weeks. So hopefully he's back ready for the season opener in Arizona, not the Japan series, but the the America opening day. I think the big one currently is Nico Horner. It's a bit up in the air as to whether or not he'll be fit for opening day. And what that might mean for the Cubs infield. It's a big loss, especially with a bit of a question mark at third base. The last thing you need is your starting second baseman, Gold Glove caliber on defense. Great contact hitter. You don't want him missing for any length of time. I think across the season, it's going to be one of our two aces. If Justin Steele or Shota Imanaga go down for any period of time, I'm a bit worried about the depth. We've already mentioned we've got Javier Assad. We've got obviously signed Matthew Boyd in the offseason, and Jameson Taillon's also coming back. But they are not on a level of Justin Steele or Shota Imanaga. They are our two clear aces. And outside of those five, Colin Ray doesn't fill me with much confidence as a starter. And then you're looking into the likes of Jordan Wicks, Ben Brown. Ben Brown did it last year before he was shut down with his neck injury. Jordan Wicks has looked good in flashes, but they're not at the level of Shota and Justin. And I think if one of those go down for even sort of with pitches, you're looking at sort of minimum 2-3 weeks after the IL stint and then ramping back up. That for me would be the biggest loss if we lost them for any period of time, as shown last year with Justin Steele. Thankfully, Imanaga was fit for the whole season and we saw how good he was. So here's hoping that those guys can stay fit for the majority of the season.
Absolutely. Yeah, those guys were a big piece for Chicago. And when Steele got hurt, I really felt like, that was kind of the writing on the wall. As well as they played down the stretch to try and make it competitive, that was definitely a big loss. Now, as we look at the 2025 team, part of this series that we like to look at is the X factor. Who do you believe is the X factor for Chicago in 2025?
I'm going to have one on the positional side and one on the pitching side because I think they're two separate facets of the game. On the offensive side, it's going to be Seiya Suzuki. We can see the damage he can do in the outfield at DH, and with the signing of Kyle Tucker, pushing him to that everyday designated hitter spot, or most games he'll be our DH. I believe down the stretch, the stats speak that he was one of the best qualified hitters in all of baseball. I think just behind Judge and Ohtani, if you take that small sample size. He's not been great in the field. A few drops come to mind. Atlanta Braves in 2023. It's probably the one that sticks out for me, where he dropped a fly ball and ultimately they got back into the game, won it, and we didn't make the playoffs. So hopefully him focusing on hitting will mean we'll get a lot more production value out of him, because he is one of the best hitters in the team, probably in the National League Central at least. He could be the best pure hitter we've got there. So that's on the positional side. On the pitching side, I think our X factor is going to be the back of the bullpen. Last year we had Hector Neris, Julian Merriweather, Adbert Alzolay, and Mark Leiter Jr. were meant to be our, big four at the end. Alzolay went down injured. Merriweather was injured for most of the year. Mark Leiter Jr. was great, but as soon as he loses that splitter, that's him done. And obviously, ultimately ended up going out to the Yankees. And Hector Neris was a bit unlucky. He wasn't brought in to be the closer, but ended up in that role. And even the games he did save, none of them were comfortable. You don't get the nickname of Heart Attack Hector for nothing. I think signing Ryan Presley, Ryan Brazier, Eli Morgan, Caleb Thielbar, and also returning from last year, Nate Pearson, Tyson Miller, and Porter Hodge, that's a much stronger bullpen. And the starting pitching this year, if they stay fit, will be great. Will be sort of top 5 rotations in all of baseball, I'm sure. But the bullpen is really well imploded last year. So the X factor for me are those lockdown innings, who's going to be your setup guys to presumably Ryan Presley in that closer role or Porter Hodge. Can we get to the 9th inning and can those guys closing perform as well as we know they can? Porter Hodge last year when he came into that role was fantastic. Can he replicate that in year 2? Is it going to be the same for Ryan Presley in a totally different ballpark? I'm hoping yes, but who knows ultimately.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I was kind of preparing for this, particular series, Ian Happ has been one of my most favorite players in the league. I think that he's an underrated talent. But I also feel like, there's still more there for him. So he was kind of my X factor for Chicago. I think that he has the ability and the skill set that if he can put it all together and stay healthy all year and kind of really find that groove, he can be a big time bat for Chicago. We know what he is capable of on the defensive side of the ball, but if we can see more from him offensively, that will definitely be a big factor for the Cubs' success in 2025. Now, as we kind of transition to the future, the top prospect, according to MLB.com, for the Cubs is Matt Shaw. And we know that his name is being bandied about as far as, playing third base every day for Chicago. What can you tell me about him, and where do you think that he ultimately lands for you guys?
He was our first round draft pick in 2023 and shot up the system. I believe last year he was at AA for a while, ended up making it to AAA. I think what set him apart was his performances for Team USA at the back end. I can't remember the name of the competition, but the back end of the year, that's when people were looking at him going, yeah, they've got a real talent here. It also helps that we have him, as we lost Cam Smith in the Kyle Tucker trade, who was our top round draft pick last year. I think the sky's the limit for Matt Shaw. I think he's shown great potential on the hitting side. Defensively, I can't say I've seen too much, but I've not heard anything that would preclude him from playing third base in the majors. I think he'll end up on the roster to begin the year, especially with Nico Horner a question mark. Having just, we're recording this the day after we signed Justin Turner, so we've got a little bit more cover on the corner infield spots. So if needed, Matt Shaw could play his more natural second base whilst Horner becomes healthy. I think he could do very well this year. I don't think it's one of those where he'll come in and his bat will need adjusting. I think his bat is ready to go, and I just want to see him hit. I want to see how he performs in that Wrigley Field infield. And I think being next to someone like Dansby Swanson and having Nico Horner there as well, that's a real great middle infield tandem that he can learn a lot off. So I think he'll make the opening day roster. He'll be our starting third baseman, and it's a wait and see. I think he will flourish. I don't think he'll get sent down next year. And if all goes well, he could be in the running for rookie of the year, provided that depending on what the Dodgers decide they want to do with Sasaki ultimately. So I think he makes the opening roster. Another one I'd like to give a little bit of love to is Moises Ballesteros. From the numbers he's been putting up, he looks like he's ready to hit the majors. Maybe not as a catcher, maybe just more of a DH. But I'd love to see him come up and get some at-bats. you know, in the middle of the season when some injuries occur. I'm hoping he's the next catcher up from Iowa. I doubt it, but like I said, I would just love to see him get some at-bats and just see what that bat can do.
Yeah, definitely an interesting back to pay attention to, especially as we look towards spring training and kind of seeing some of these prospects get more time and at bats. It's definitely going to be a guy to pay attention to. Now, part of this series, we always try to venture out and make a bold prediction. What's the bold prediction for the Cubs for you?
My bold prediction is that Dansby Swanson hits over 30 home runs. I think the defense, you know, it's very, very bold, and no doubt people in the comments are going to, you know, they're going to ask if I've been drinking or something, but he can hit. I think last year he was injured for most of the year, and he only got that sorted out. I think it was an abdominal injury, and he only really got that sorted out in the off season. The year before, you could see, you know, his debut for the Cubs, he ended up with a 4-hit game. The man can hit. The defense hasn't taken a step backwards, and for me, he could get 30 home runs, provided A, he stays healthy, and B, Wrigley Field is nice. Last year, it was an absolute hitter's nightmare with the wind blowing in. I'm hoping this year the wind decides it wants to take balls out of the yard. So I'm going to say Dansby Swanson, 30 home runs. I hope I'm right, but yeah, just thought I'd put one out there.
No, for sure. I mean, that's definitely a bold prediction, but something that, you know, feels possible for a former number 1 overall in the draft. Definitely a viable option there. Now, mine's going to be real bold. I don't think it actually is going to happen, but my bold prediction is that Kyle Tucker gets traded at the deadline. I genuinely don't believe that it's probably that it's going to happen, because I think Chicago is going to be in it all season long. But you know, in taking a bold stance, that would be my stance, that they acquired him in the offseason and then end up trading him away at the deadline. But again, I don't really think that that's going to be the case. I think that he's going to find himself a very big and pivotal part of this Cubs lineup all season long. Now, as we look at the roster as a whole, the team as a whole, what do you think is the biggest question facing the Cubs in 2025?
I feel we've touched on it already. I think it's the third base. You know, last year we had Christopher Morel start the year there, who seemed to be making an error every game. And the thing with Morel is absolutely love him as a player. I think he looks like he just really enjoys baseball. But if he's not hitting, he's not much use at the moment for me as a player. So we started with Christopher Morel. We had players like Patrick Wisdom, Mastroboni fill in there. Ended the year with Isaac Paredes, who it showed how hard Wrigley Field was when Paredes was getting nowhere near the amount of home runs at home than he was at the Rays. Obviously, Tropicana Field was a much better ballpark for his hitting style. It was a bit of a shock when we traded Paredes away. I think there were 3 more years of control. He was showing enough defensively to be, worth another shot again this coming year. And I think we did miss out on Alex Bregman. I think we put in a very competitive offer. I'm a bit shocked he went with the Red Sox with the deferrals, but I think it came down to that opt-out option where we wanted him for 2 years, where the Red Sox were like, no, have a monster year next year, you can opt out of the contract. And if he does, I can see him opting out of that deal with the Red Sox. Biggest question mark is going to be third base, as we've said. Is Matt Shaw ready? Is he big league ready? If not, we haven't really got as much cover there as we did before. We've lost Wisdom, Paredes, Mastroboni. You're really looking at Justin Turner, who I think will be average at best in the field. He's entering his age 41 season. There'll be a little bit of regression there, I'm sure. Outside of that, you're looking at someone like John Bertie, who I think will fill in admirably at every infield spot and probably every outfield spot as well. But he's not going to give you that X factor. The real question is, can Matt Shaw deliver? And that for me is our biggest question mark.
Yeah, I think that the Cubs are really putting a lot of weight on what Matt Shaw is capable of. I do agree with you. I think that the opt-outs for the deal with Bregman in Boston is kind of what pushed him there. I also think that the relationship that he had with Alex Cora probably played a factor into that as well. But to me, I agree with you. I think that, third base is a very big question mark. The other question that I kind of had, and you kind of touched on it a little earlier, is can Cubs front office and management and ownership put together a package well enough to entice Kyle Tucker to sign an extension before hitting free agency? I think that is going to be one of the narratives that kind of looms large over the organization all year, and how they handle that is really going to determine whether or not it becomes a distraction all season long or something that they can put to bed early on. In looking at the opposite side, what do you think is the biggest frustration for Cubs fans heading into the 2025 season?
I think it's when we traded away Cody Bellinger, and I think this has been going on a few years now. When we traded away Cody Bellinger, they said that they were going to reinvest that salary in other players. Ultimately, after that, they missed out on Bregman, who would have had, let's say, 30 million, and instead signed Justin Turner for 6. They've not really reinvested that money. Kyle Tucker, whilst he's a superstar, is only 15 million this year in arbitration, or 15 and a half. For me, it's partly down to the owners, partly down to Jed Hoyer. Hoyer's entering the last year of his contract. Hence why I think he went out and traded for Kyle Tucker, because he wants to show he can make an impact. It's the reluctance to spend money. You look at the Dodgers spending. Dodgers could click their fingers and have anyone they want. I mean, the fact that Ryan Brazier was DFA'd, for me, he was great last year for the Dodgers. But because they went and signed Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates, he got pushed out, which I think is, it's great for the Cubs because we picked him up, but I think it's astounding how much depth they have because they're not scared to spend the money. The Yankees, to an extent, as well in the past. The Mets with the Juan Soto deal. These teams are on the Cubs level. I think of all the central teams across both divisions, the Cubs are by far the biggest market team. We get the most revenue in, ticket prices, food and drink prices, sponsorship deals. We are one of the biggest market teams in all of baseball, but we don't spend to that level. And I think whilst there's no salary cap in MLB currently, that might change in a couple of years. Whilst there's no salary cap, they should be looking to spend. They should be able to compete with the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Mets of the world, but they're choosing not to. And I think that's the biggest frustration, is not really spending money. Even though they've had these marquee signings, they've not had to spend that much to get them. As I go back to the Kyle Tucker and 15 million, he'll hit free agency and he'll be on 30, 40 million a year. So that was a cut price deal. And it's a risky one because we gave up quite a lot for him. So biggest frustration is definitely ownership, and especially around Jed Hoyer, just not spending much because they want to stay below the luxury tax threshold, which they can afford to go over if they chose to.
100% agree with you. Yeah, I think that, and in doing this series, we've had conversations with quite a few different teams so far, and that's kind of a growing sentiment around the league as far as, ownership not really reinvesting into the product on the field. So definitely something that is a sentiment felt around the game right now. So it will be interesting to see in a couple of years when the new CBA negotiations have to go down, what is done to kind of address those frustrations. Now, as we look towards the on-field product and the offense for the Chicago Cubs, how would you grade them out on a scholastic level A to F in terms of how the states do it?
Well, to be fair, we use that over in the UK now, but then we changed the numbers just to make it even more fun. If I was going to grade the offense going into this year, it's probably going to be a B. I think Ian Happ will hit again next year like he did last year. I think Kyle Tucker, we spoke about him at length. Seiya Suzuki, we've touched on. I think a healthy Dansby Swanson will hit. I think Matt Shaw can hit. I think Michael Busch will have another good year. And those are sort of our top 6-7 players. Where I have the biggest question mark is the catcher position. Last year, we did not have a great, they didn't give us anything until sort of July, August, when Miguel Amaya had a little bit of time out of the game just to work on his swing, and he came back a completely different player. Christian Bethancourt was great in the small plate sample that he had. But I'm hoping this year the catchers can hit the ground running and really provide for that offense. The other question mark is Pete Crow-Armstrong. Fabulous centre fielder for me. Was Gold Glove worthy had he played the whole year last year in centre field. Can he provide the offense? Can he take that little step up? I'm not just talking about getting on base and, we've seen the speed, we've seen the stolen bases. Can he hit for more power? Can he turn those singles into doubles into triples? And because we've got those question marks at centre field and catcher, and to a lesser extent the middle infield, that's why I'm going to put it at a B. I think if we didn't have Kyle Tucker, we'd be talking a C, B minus at best. But yeah, I'm going to say a B.
So in kind of my preparation for the series, I have it at a C plus, and it's for a lot of the same reasons that you just said. I think that there are questions as to when you're going to get Nico back. How much is he going to be able to provide once he gets back? The depth behind those first set of starters. What are you getting out of catcher? To me, there's still questions about the everyday consistency of Michael Busch. What are you getting out of Matt Shaw? So for me, there's a little bit more questions as far as what the Cubs offense is going to look like. I think that there is the capability of getting up to, an above average grade. But for me right now, it's kind of borderline average when it comes to that. I think that there is room for upside. I absolutely, as I said earlier, love Ian Happ. I think that he is going to have a big year. I think Kyle Tucker, as you said, is going to be phenomenal in that Cubs lineup every day. But to me, there are questions, and that's kind of where I have it as a C plus. Now, as we switch to the pitching side of things, how would you grade out the pitching staff?
See, if it was just on starting pitching, you'd probably be talking, a lot higher. I'm going to say a B plus. I think the starting pitching is A minus worthy, provided that they stay fit. I think Shota Imanaga and Justin Steele, take each one individually. Shota Imanaga was in the top 5 for most stats last year: wins, ERA, strikeouts, top 5 or top 10. He had a great rookie year. Is there going to be a little bit of regression in year 2? I don't know. We'll find out in about a month's time. Justin Steele for me is criminally underrated. I think that's partially due to the injury, but 2023 was his true breakout year. I think deserved to finish higher in the Cy Young votes. 2024 2024 he started with that injury in the opening day against the Rangers. Didn't really see him back again for a month and a half, and that's ultimately where we lost most of our momentum. Backing those up, you've got Jameson Taillon, who could be an A plus pitcher, or he could be a D minus pitcher, depending on what Taillon decides to rock out. 2023 was not a great year for him, but he seemed to find it last year. And some of his especially in the early part of the season, he was shoveling. He was superb on some of his. He went under the radar because of how good Imanaga was. You got Matthew Boyd, who'll probably come in as that 3 or 4 starter. Looked really good for the Guardians, albeit in a very small sample. Can he stay injury free in 25? If he can he replicate what he showed in those, last month and a half plus the playoffs? And Javier Assad, who's probably my favorite pitcher, just because the first game I ever saw him, he was terrible. He went back to Iowa as a swingman, came back up, and the first half of the year really had it. I think there are question marks. When he does lose composure, he does tend to give up a few barrels. He's got a great pitch mix. And this year he has to progress on from what he did last year. And last year he was sub 3.5 ERA. Really good in the first half, went off a little bit in the second half. And I think with those 5, along with maybe Cade Horton coming in for some starts, Ben Brown, I'd be looking at an A minus, provided they all stay healthy. The bullpen, I'd say it's a big question mark, as we've discussed already. Most of the core of that bullpen are going to be new. I think they are a better group of relievers on paper, but so was Hector Neris before we signed him, and he didn't turn out too hot for the Cubs. Can Ryan Brazier and Ryan Presley, be those back-end closers that we need? Can Porter Hodge, is there going to be a regression with Porter Hodge on his second year and maybe that closer role? I hope not, but we'll wait and see. The thing that does worry me is outside of those names we've already thrown out there, the depth isn't great. Julian Merriweather, it remains to be seen whether or not he'll make the bullpen. If not, he'll have to be DFA'd, unfortunately. He's very injury prone. Big question marks there. Cody Petit, where's he going to end up? Keegan Thompson is out of options. At times, he looked like the best reliever in baseball. At other times, he couldn't hit the strike zone if there wasn't a batter there. There are real question marks in the depth. I think you've got a top 6 or 7 bullpen arms, but as soon as 1 or 2 of those go down, I would get worried. So that's why I've got I think I had a sort of B for this as well. So I'll stick with that.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I have it. And for the same reasons, I think that especially the top half of your starting rotation is monsters. Imanaga was so good last year. Justin Steele a couple of years ago. And I think having Jameson Taillon as your number 3 starter is somebody that can be reliable. You have to score runs for him, but he's a guy who's going to be able to go out there, and as long as he's healthy, he's going to give you 5-6 innings every time out.
Yeah.
And with the acquisitions that were made to the guys that you mentioned, Caleb Pilbar, Ryan Brazier, Ryan Presley, these guys can help, guys like Porter Hodge kind of grow and mature. So I kind of have that as an above average grade. There are questions to the depth, as you said, and to see kind of how things shake out from there. But overall, I do think that it is going to be a solid pitching staff, and that's why I gave it an above average grade. Now, as we kind of jump to the next segment here, this is where we like to kind of take a look at the division ranking previews. Pacoda and Fangraphs have you both as the number 1 winner, the division winner in 2025. Pacoda has the Cubs winning 91 games, and Fangraph has them winning 84 games, but still claiming the division. Where do you see the Cubs finishing, and kind of what does that win total look like?
I think we will need more than 84 wins to win the division. No matter how well the Cubs played, we've got a team called the Milwaukee Brewers in the division, who seem to be our kryptonite every year. Even after we stole their manager, they still, I'll be fair, they dominated us. I think Pat Murphy had a great year. I have us sitting at around the 88 win mark. I don't think we'll get 91. I think that's a little bit too optimistic. I think 88 wins will win the division. I have us as the division winners. For me, that's more down to the fact that we've done quite a lot in the off season. The biggest one being Cole Tucker, and the teams around us haven't really. I mean, the Pirates, as usual, haven't really spent anything. I think they're going to rely on Paul Skeens to get them as close to 500 as they can, and Jared Jones. The Cardinals are in a really, really weird spot, trying to trade away Nolan Arenado. The ownership have come out and said, we don't want to win this year. We're looking to the future, but they haven't really got rid of anyone. Okay, Goldschmidt left on a free. But, I would have expected them to try and ship Sonny Gray off, Ryan Helsley, Nolan Arenado, but obviously no one really wanted him. I see them, finishing just below 500. I think they'll have a down year. The Reds, although they have spent a lot, haven't really spent it in the right areas. They haven't really got that the real oomph of a signing. I think trading away Jonathan India to the Royals was a good move because they've brought in Gavin Lux, so I think it's an upgrade in that position. But I just don't see where they're going to get their offense from. I think Ellie De La Cruz still strikes out too much. Their pitching outside of Hunter Green, I wouldn't have any faith in it if I was a Reds fan. I know they traded, was it for Cole Reagans from the Royals?
They got a Brady Singer.
Brady Singer, sorry. Yeah, I think Brady Singer is going to add to whichever guy it was is going to add to that rotation, be a really good number 2 behind Hunter Green, but I worry for their depth. And then the Brewers, I mean, for me, they haven't really added anyone in the offseason. They traded away Devin Williams. They got Nestor Cortez. I think that was a bad trade for the Brewers. I don't think Nestor Cortez is the answer. The biggest one for me is Willie Adames. Finally leaving the NL Central and signing for the Giants. Again, they're not really re-signing him. They haven't really brought in a replacement for him. And I think it is all that their offense is going to depend on playing to contact, stealing the bases, and Yelich needs to have a great year, or else they're not going to have the runs. Yep. Saying that, they do always try and they always find a way to win against the Cubs. I just think they'll struggle to be more consistent, especially with that. Adames was leading that infield defense for me, and they've lost him. They haven't replaced him. It's a young team. I just think they might have an off year this year. Saying that, they'll probably go and win 92 games and smash us in the division. But I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic. I think we're winning. I do think we're going to win the NL Central at around the 88, 89 win mark.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting season, especially in that division. Like you said, I think that was a very apt, breakdown of every team in the league and kind of where they stand. So I definitely think that the Cubs are going to be around that same win total. I'm a little higher on the Reds. I think Terry Francona is going to make a big difference in that clubhouse. But I think that you guys are going to be battling, and it is going to take that, 87, 88, 89 win mark to win the division in the NL Central for sure. So kind of as we wrap up here, this series is entitled The State of the Franchise. So I want to know your thoughts on where the state of the 2025 Chicago Cubs is.
Short term, I think it's good. I think we've touched on it already. The new CBA agreement that comes in I believe, 2027 is impacting the Cubs a lot more than it should. We're not spending as much, and we don't want those long-term contracts because we're not sure what 2027 onwards is going to look like. The amount of money coming off the books in the next 2 years, I think everyone bar Dansby Swanson and probably I think Shota Managa, everyone else deals could be up for grabs by then. So long term is a big question mark on the state of the franchise. But specifically for 2025, I'm going to be positive. I think it's good. Good, bordering great. I wish we'd had that one more marquee signing. As we sit here on the 19th of Feb. I'd love one more bullpen signing, a David Robertson as an example, just to really shore up that bullpen with depth and extend. I always like to have quality players playing at AAA, young, hungry players that when they get their chance, they come in and they perform. I think we're going to win the NL Central. I don't think we'll finish with a higher win total than either the East or the West teams. So I think we'll be going into the wild card round. I think if I'm being optimistic, I think we'll get to the divisional series. If we get a home game at Wrigley Field, it is a tough place to come and play. Hopefully we don't get someone like the Padres or the Mets. We get someone a little bit easier and we sneak through the wild card round and ultimately probably come up against the Dodgers in the next round, just knowing our luck. And I think we'll get to the divisional series. But for me, the franchise is good, bordering great for 2025 specifically. I do worry a little bit more about the long term, but that could go one or two ways in 2027. There's a lot of stuff up in the air.
Yeah, that new CBA is definitely leaving a lot of things kind of in question for a lot of teams, I believe. But the Cubs are one of those teams that, like you mentioned earlier, they are a big market club managing with a small market mindset. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they kind of shake everything out. In my opinion, the state of the franchise, I believe, just like you, it's in a good place for 2025. There are questions with, kind of the long-term future. And I think some of those questions come down to the fact that Jed Hoyer is in his walk year as the general manager, kind of what happens with that, where the direction of the franchise is headed can sometimes leave questions. So definitely an interesting year. Again, in that National League Central, it's going to be a season-long battle, I believe, with at least 3 of the 4 teams, 3 of the 5 teams in the division, maybe 4 out of the 5. But for Chicago, they are definitely looked at as the favorites in the division. And I think with the things that they've done this year is with good reason. So without a doubt. So I want to thank you for joining me. Let everybody know where they can get more content from you.
Yeah, sure. So my Instagram is at Brit Does Baseball. We're a British blog. We've been going since August 2024. And that's really where you can find sort of all the most up-to-date information with our articles. We also have a website link that's in our bio. So if you follow the Instagram, which I believe is up in my nameplate, you'll be able to follow our link on there. Starting in April of this year, we are going to be doing a Brit Does Baseball Does podcast, which is a great title. It took me ages to think of, where we'll be discussing, with fans both this side of the pond and your side of the pond. We cover all 30 teams. So whilst I'm a Cubs fan, we do endeavour to try and include every single team, including the Athletics, whatever they want to be called next year. We will have some content on them. And that's what sets us apart from, quite a few baseball blogs, is the fact that we will cover every single team as much as we can. So follow Brit Does Baseball. Podcast will be coming out in April 2025, available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. But yeah, it's a really exciting year for us.
Absolutely, definitely, and we're looking forward to it. As a baseball community, the more the merrier, in my opinion. So definitely thank you for jumping on with us. As we kind of wrap up here, we definitely want to let everybody know that we do have our merchandise shop on Printify. So you just have to search baseball-banter-merch.printify.me to be able to search out merchandise from our shop. We got some fun stuff in the works for the shop as well. So make sure you keep it locked in there. And make sure that if you're on the YouTube side, you keep it locked in by hitting the subscribe button and the bell for post notifications, so that each and every time we drop new content here, you will be notified. If you're on the audio side, make sure that you leave a 5-star rating and review, as it does help us continue to grow this community. Once again, for a Brit Does Baseball, I want to thank you for joining me, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Peace.